Ken Lashley is a comic book veteran and one of comics' go-to cover artists. Ken has loved comics from when he was a young boy growing up in Toronto. His mother bought him his first book, Black Panther. Ken is pretty sure his mom never read the issue before she gave it to him. It was Black Panther versus the KKK. A few years into his career, Ken was given the opportunity to draw Black Panther with Hollywood producer Reggie Hudlin doing the writing. It was considered one of the best runs in Black Panther history. Ken has worked on such titles as Excalibur, Excalibur Age of Apocalypse, Black Panther, X-Men, Spider-Man, Flash, JLA, Superman, Superman Doomed, and others. Outside of comics, Ken has worked for Hasbro, Lucasfilm, Mattel, and Fox Sports, creating designs for such lines as G.I. Joe, Transformers, and Spider-Man, Avengers, and Star Wars. The work Ken created for Fox Sports was even nominated for an Emmy. Now, let's join Ken as he does a live drawing of a fan favorite comic book character and takes questions from the audience along the way. Ken, go ahead and jump right in, and I'll toss some questions your way as they come in from the audience.
Oh, hello, everybody. And I don't know if you guys can hear me. Thumbs up would be good. Hopefully everything's working.
Yes.
That's awesome. So yeah, I always do these. I do these live drawings once a week. I have a group, and they're kind of like they're relentless. So they were like, "Hey, Ken, can you do a drawing?" Because we know these cons that the world has changed so drastically over the last 2 years. So I'm at home and I'm doing a lot of drawings. So this is my KillaCon sign. So this is a sneak peek of people behind the scenes. This is my sign. So before I start every single live stream, I start with this thing. I usually do this. I act like it's really motion graphics. I do some music. But today we're going to do something really interesting. I'm going to draw. I haven't decided what I'm exactly going to draw, but I think I would just do Venom. Venom is pretty one of those cool characters to draw, easier to draw. Hopefully, get focus. There you go. And I start right to marker, so it just gets right into it. So I don't waste a little bit of time doing sketches and roughing it all out. I just get right into it. So it's hopefully this will focus. There you go. I use whatever markers on sale. People always ask me what markers do I use, but that's not really how it works for me. And off we go. You can ask me any questions as I go along. Yeah, I've been working for a long time. I've been working for I'm currently doing all the covers for 2099 Spider-Man. I'm also working for I am Batman, which is the Black Batman. It's it's a great thing to work on those kinds of things. I just talked to DC this morning. I look like I'm doing some more work on some other Batman titles. And I also do all the a lot of packaging for Hasbro, and I also do some stuff for covers for Bounty Hunters, which is another Marvel property introduced to Lucasfilm. So I do a lot of fun stuff.
Hey, Ken, could you just talk about a little bit about what the process is like, how you get assigned different pieces of art, whether it's for a cover or for packaging? Like, what does that process look like for you?
Well, really, I mean, like you're sort of I'm known through the sort of the business as sort of one of those guys that does a lot of different things. So how it works is usually your track record speaks a lot, or things you've done in the past. But most of the time, it's I get an email. They reach out to me and ask me if I would be interested in doing this. Ask what my availability is. Um, Most of the times I say yes. Sometimes I say no, depending on really my availability. But most of the time, I can kind of squeeze it in, fit it in. And then we go from there. Usually they give me the deadlines, what timelines. I'm pretty fast, so I don't worry about timelines too much. I just kind of say, well, I always figure it's better to get it done quicker than wait. I'm not one of those guys who procrastinates. I used to be a procrastinator. I used to be one of those guys who used to wait and kind of wait. I'll do it later. But I've learned over the years it's better to try and get it done as soon as possible. So trust me when I say that I've learned a lot of lessons over the years of just getting stuff done. I think that's one of the things, managing time. I think it's one of the things I'm getting better at. I wasn't always great at it. I was always thinking, I'm going to do beautiful, gorgeous pieces of artwork. And the truth of the matter is that's not really what the business is about. The business is about delivering because the book comes out on time, regardless
Hey,
of whether I want to do beautiful things or not.
Ken, sorry to interrupt you really quick. We're having a little bit of trouble hearing you. So I don't know if you have a mic, if you can move it closer or just speak up a little bit, that would be great.
Sure. Let me maybe I'll switch the mics. Well, whatever. I'll move it a little closer. Is that better?
Yes,
Is that
much
better?
better. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the things that I do is managing my time is kind of important. Uh, as you see, I do like maybe about 10 or 15 covers a month, which is, you know, it's a lot of work. So you've got to managing myself is probably the hardest thing to do. I work weekends, which is tough sometimes, but that's kind of the gig. But I mean, I think that that's probably the most difficult thing I have to do is just budgeting my time and getting things done. But how I get jobs is usually through my track record, and also I have a pretty decent following. So, a lot of these companies, oh, Ken has a pretty decent following. I actually, my group actually has, when they announce my name on projects, there's actually a spike in product being sold at my Hasbro site, because I have a pretty strong following. So it's pretty interesting. Those things are important.
All right, we have a couple of questions for you. We have one, let's see. Someone asks, is it possible to get sick of drawing something or something you've never drawn that is on your list?
Oh,
so I guess two
absolutely.
questions there.
Well, yeah, that's exactly, that's so true. I always think it's funny when an editor will call you up and they talk to you as if you read everything that's out on the shelves, and you don't, right? Like it's impossible to read every single comic book. So I get a call from something that happened to me this week. There was a call from something that I wasn't familiar with, so I had to do some other research. Sometimes you get things like, because I'm a guy who started off in this business drawing Excalibur with X-Men. Um, Everywhere I go for the last 10 years was all about X-Men, 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 X-Men. So I got a bit tired of it a little bit, but I mean, it's still comics, it's still fun, so it is one of those things. But yeah, you do get tired of it. And it is sort of one of those things where you have to be professional, right? Sometimes you're not loving everything you do. And that's what another thing too. People think, oh, you must be so lucky because you get to draw comics all day and it's so much fun. I said, well, it's still a job. I mean, there are days where I'm not feeling inspired, and you just got to keep going. And the work can't look any different than when you are inspired. That's kind of the gig. So trust me, there are days where I wish I could just sit here and relax a little bit, but those days are few and far between.
We have another question from Amy, and she asks, do you look at reference images or is this all straight out of your brain?
It really depends. I mean, I don't use reference very often because I don't have time. I mean, it would be nice to have, perfect reference for exactly the shot that I want, but 9 times out of 10, it's sort of like, well, I'm going to have to do with make do with what I got. So 9 times out of 10, it's usually out of my head. But if there's a very specific shot, like I was doing an X-Men issue where they were in the White House, and I had to do some research there, and they were Congress. So there are specific shots that were requiring me to use reference. But most of the time, it's labs and things that I kind of can make up as we go along. So most of the time, it's definitely out of your head. Probably
Cool.
better if I use reference though.
All right, we have another question from Brian, and he asks, how many comps do you do when you're designing a cover?
I think the more you give them, the more trouble it becomes for yourself. So I usually keep it to 3. The last Star Wars cover I did were just a little while ago. I did 1, and they were just like that. I just go ahead. I'm very lucky to work with Lucasfilm. Is really cool with me because they're like, well, I'm one of those guys where they kind of trust you. I mean, I think once they get to a certain trust, they just kind of say, oh, whatever you do is fine. And sometimes you do 3 or 4. I mean, very rarely, unless I really inspired. I did a Mandalorian cover a little while ago, and I sent in 4, and the feedback from Lucasfilm was, yeah, any of these 3 are fine. So I was kind of like, okay, well, all right. So then I get to choose, and that happens. It happens fairly bit, a fair bit. So now they kind of trust you at this point in my career. They're kind of like, oh, just do whatever you think would be cool. So it is one of those things, but usually about 3.
Oh, awesome.
On average.
Okay. So we have another question from Catherine. She wants to know, how much autonomy do you have over the creative versus client input?
That's a great question, but it really all depends. I mean, in the first part of my career, I did a lot of push, a lot of back and forth. Now at this point in my career, it's very little back and forth. It's sort of like just do your thing, unless it is very specific. Like Star Wars is very specific. So, but most of the time, that stuff is just like, is it on model? And that's really what all they're concerned about. But the ideas and all that stuff, they come from me. some editors will say, this is what I want, this is what I was thinking about, but if you have a better idea, then go ahead and do it. And 9 times out of 10, I just kind of do what I think would be cool. And they don't really care, as long as it's a cool cover in the end. So
Cool.
mhm.
All right, so one more. Well, Alex just comments, this is so cool to watch. So keep it up. And then not a question, but a comment from Jake. He says, Age of Apocalypse Excalibur 1 was the first comic I ever bought myself. So I am super stoked.
Oh, that's wild. Why I did that when I was 12, so I don't. That's pretty amazing, you know. So, yeah, well, that was such a crazy job at the time because I didn't really know. I was only in the business maybe a few months at the time. Maybe I'd done maybe 4 or 5 issues, so I didn't really understand the ramifications or how big that was going to be. I was just sort of trying to figure my way out through the business and around the business. And I remember how massive that was. I remember when I went to the comic book store and they had, you know, just miles and miles of, there was so much of books came out. I think they sold 500,000 copies of that. And it was, and
Wow.
at the time that was, you know, that's a pretty good selling book. If that's sold
Mhm.
now, that would be the number one selling book by about 400,000. So that, you know, the world has really changed, but man, it was a crazy gig. And I remember I was in Vancouver at the time, I think, for a show. And I went to a comic convention. I mean, I was to a store. Sorry, I went to a store, and they had had ordered about 2,000 issues. It seemed like it was just like the whole top shelf was just my work, and I was just like, wow, this is gonna be a lot bigger than I remember what I thought it was going to be. So man, it was pretty nuts. But that was my top gigs
That's great.
early in my career too. So very early. I
Okay, a
wish I would
couple
have.
other.
Okay, go ahead. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
exactly. All right, a couple other questions here. Vanessa asked, was this a hard field to get started in? What did your portfolio consist of when you started out?
So weird how like that's a great question for the time today, but at the time when I got in, there was very little. Oh my goodness, so weird. It's such a different time. Like there was no Instagram, there was none of that stuff. So you just went and you showed your work. And someone took my stuff to New York City and showcased my work, and I got a job. I mean, like looking back now, like it's just unheard of what happened. It's just insane because that's just you can't do that now. The world is so different, and it's better. I mean, people say it's oh it's so much difficult, but it's not really because people can find you. Like editors can find you anywhere now. When I was got in, it was sort of like you had to, you know, get into a car, get an airplane, go to the shows where these editors were, which is San Diego Comic Con or New York or even in Toronto, where I'm from, or wherever. You had to physically go there, but now you don't have to. Like the world has changed so much. So portfolios, I mean, online presence is really what it's about nowadays. I mean, they can see you instantly, see what your stuff looks like. You can have a piece that you finished at 4 o'clock be on the net by 4:15, and everyone can see it. Um, so it's a different time. I think it's amazing now. I mean, it just truly is amazing. And the playing field is definitely leveled off. It used to be, oh, only people in the States could go, or people close to a show could go. You have to spend money to do it. Now you don't. You just, as long as
Mhm.
you have an online presence, you're good to go. The world has really changed. But when I got in, it was definitely you needed to meet somebody. You need to physically go to a show and meet somebody. And that's how I got in. Somebody took my stuff to New York City. He was doing interviews for a TV show called Prisons of Gravity. His name was Mark Asquith, and he showed my work to Marvel, and Marvel said, "Wow, this guy's pretty good," and I got a job. And that's exactly what happened. So like the world is way different now.
Very cool. So we have a question from Jane, sort of related to that. So were you always an illustrator, or how did you get into comics specifically?
Well, yeah, I always wanted to be an illustrator. I always wanted to draw comics, that kind of stuff. So it was one of those things where I kind of followed my passions, which is pretty amazing these days to follow your passions, and that's what I did. And a lot of people thought, oh, you're a Canadian kid wanting to draw comic books. How could that possibly work? And I was like, I'm going to do this. And I was one of those people hell bent on what I wanted to do. I have a very strong sense of belief in myself, which is really, I guess, in a lot of ways it's great, and sometimes it's problematic because I believe I can do anything, and I believe that. So I don't worry about what other people say, and the truth, even the truth of the matter doesn't really affect me. I said, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to get a job. I'm going to work at Marvel Comics, and that was kind of it, right? And other people were like, "Oh, really? How could you?" And I said, I'm going to do this. So I was hell bent on it. No one could deter me from it. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I really didn't. And even now, when reviews don't affect me, and people say things, it doesn't mean anything to me really. I mean, I appreciate it. I mean, nicer or any kind of comment, it really doesn't affect me at all. Like I don't read reviews about my work because it has so little to do with my day to day. Because people always, they see your work and they think, oh, this is you, but it's not me. There's a colorist, there's timelines, there's editors, there's so many other people involved with the work, that it's not just me drawing. Even when they say, oh, great cover by Ken, I'm the first person to say, well, I don't color, so it's a colorist who did that. And this, and the editor gave me this, and I make sure everyone who gets a piece of the love, because it really is that.
That's great. It's really a team effort then.
Yeah, it is. It is. People like to only say one thing about one person about it, but it is a team effort.
Great. So we have a couple of questions. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it has to be because of the immediacy and speed of how these things come out, right? Like they come out
Right.
so often that, like, it has to be. I'm gonna move back my camera just a little bit so you can see the whole piece. Is that better? It's a little off. It's a little not straight, but it is what it is.
Oh, it's awesome. So we have a couple questions. So you mentioned that you don't do color. So a couple process questions. So if you could talk a little bit more about the process and
Sure.
what you sort of submit, and then how you do your designs. And then we have a couple questions about whether you digitize your illustrations, and then if you work on them or edit them at all once they are digitized.
Well, I don't color, not because I can't color. It's just it's time. Because like when you only got 3 weeks. Okay, I'll put it in perspective. Okay, I'll just pick last weekend. I'm doing a Star Wars cover. I get the approvals. I do my sketches. Um, Lucasfilm says, yeah, we like this one. I do it. I do the drawing, and I get my approvals on a Saturday. Say it's a Saturday afternoon. Um, I have to have the whole cover has to be done by Tuesday. So I finish my part, which is the drawing. It takes me about a day and a half to finish, and then I go out and hand it out to the colorist. Now that colorist only has a day and a half to finish their part of it, and then it has to go back into the printing into the queue by Tuesday morning. So time is a time, and we don't have a lot of it. And when it comes to comic books, so everything has to be done within, I would say, between 24 to 48 hours. That's really what happens in most of the jobs that I do. I would love to spend more time on it, but that's really not the case in comic books. You just don't have time. So most of the artists that I work that are doing mainstream superhero comic books like myself, you have 24 hours to do a cover, or at the most maybe 36 hours. So it's got to be done fast. So it's better for me to hand it off. Say I do 2 covers that weekend. One time I did 2 covers. I did an Obi-Wan Kenobi cover, and I did a Spider-Man cover in the same weekend. I don't have time to go back into it. So what happens is I finish it, and it goes hands off to the colorist. And then I think the colorist has the hardest job because I can eat up time. I'm trying to be respectful of their time, but if I want to take an extra couple of hours on something because I think it's right, they've got to make it up. So I try not to do that. I try not to make them hate my guts. So I'm always trying to hustle to make sure that the colorist has as much time as I have, right? So if we get 48 hours to do it, I try and do my stuff as quickly as possible, because in the end, it's really, they're the ones who bring it home. So
Mhm.
if you give them less time, then you're going to get a substandard product. So you're always trying to give them as much time as possible.
Right. And so then, let's see, we have a question from Erin. She asks, what are your thoughts on raster-based digital illustration tools like Procreate? Does that feel like the future of illustration, or will marker and paper hold on?
Well, I mean, I do both. I do some digital work. I mean, I got my Cintiq, and I do some other stuff, but it's a bit of mixture. It's a bit, sometimes when I'm designing things, I like to do it digitally because it's just faster, and I can do more things and more versions quicker. But there is a tactile nature to this that I think, fans really love, old school things done on paper. You know what I mean? So it's I still love the paper. I mean, like I love to do it. I still think it's a magic show a little bit. So I kind of love to do it. So I think the future is definitely tools. I mean, I work with Adobe on some really cool products and Fresca, and and some of their tools are just amazing. And the simulations of watercolor, the watercolor brush is unbelievable, and I use that a lot when I'm doing digital stuff. But when it still comes down to comic books, I still do it old school, so to speak. I still do it on paper. Um, Sometimes I wish I'd done it digitally because I
Yeah.
could just go, I go, oh man, I could have made that, I could have made that change so much easier if I had just done it this way. But
Right.
but it is what it is, right? And I think that's some of the mistakes are beautiful, right? So
Yeah.
um I use a lot of that stuff. I mean, come on, it's a bit of everything. But I definitely think the future is definitely digital tools that act like real. Well, they're all real tools. I shouldn't say that one tool is more real than the other tool. They're all just tools. That's why I used to, when I first got in. Oh, I'll tell you a little bit of my history. When I first started doing it, I didn't do anything digital at all, and I was kind of not really afraid to do it. Just that I was more proficient with the old school tools, so I didn't want to learn anything else. I was like, I'm good. I'm doing this the way I always have done it. But then, I bought a Cintiq and it sat here for a year and a half. And then I was like, well, maybe I should probably use this wicked thing that I bought. Actually, I shouldn't even say that I bought it. It was a gift from one of my clients. And it was great. It was great. So, and I just sat here and I just sat here and sat here and sat here. And then I said, I should really start playing with it. So then I did. And now I think, why did I let this sit here for so long? Because it is truly it's an amazing tool. But they're all just like anything else. You can't be afraid of the tools. And you can't also be afraid of making mistakes, right? Like that's what paper has taught me is like, there's happy accidents. Just go about your business, right? There's nothing wrong with making a mistake. I think we have to sort of get out of our own way sometimes of that things. Like, nothing's perfect. It's just, no piece of artwork I've ever done is perfect or finished. It's more like abandoned. You just gotta you gotta reach a point where you just gotta get on with it, right?
Right.
It's Monday and it's got to go to the printer on Monday
Yeah.
evening. So whatever, let's get on with it.
Do you think that working on with marker on paper sort of locks you in a little bit more and helps you meet those deadlines rather than working digitally where you might have the urge to keep tweaking and tweaking and tweaking up to the last second?
Yeah, I think that's well. I mean, I do. I mean, sometimes there's stuff where I have to work digitally because I'll draw a costume and then they go, oh, costume change. You're like, oh, this person's not actually wearing that version of the costume can. And I was like, okay. And then, I can only do that digitally, right? Like I can't go back. Well, I have done patches, but most of the time it's just digital. So I'll go back in and I'll, fire the Cintiq and just finish it that way. And sometimes when I change it, I go, man, I should have done this, the whole thing like this. It would have been so much easier. But also there's an aftermarket too, right? People really want to have the original page, right? So sometimes you got to think of that as well. So it's a mixed bag, but I definitely believe that. I mean, I'm old school, right? There's some people who are completely digital, who don't do anything, on traditional form, like not at all. So I mean, it's more power to them. They grew up in a different time than I did, but I believe that I still like to work on paper. So
Awesome. Oh, we have a couple more questions here. Let's see. We have one from Allison. She asks, what tips can you share for art directors who want to hire illustrators to make custom work?
wow, art directors. I would say that um, okay, if you're gonna hire an artist, then you kind of let them be an artist, right? Like nothing is more frustrating when somebody who doesn't draw is telling you this is what I think you should do, right? And it's like, well, okay, just let me do my thing. And I mean, there's so many times that you're sitting in a room and they're all discussing what you do, but no one's talking to the artist who actually has to do the work, right? So I think you have to sort of like listen a little bit to the people in your crew. Like I ask questions all the time. Like I always say, hey, even the fan base, hey, what do you guys think of this? And hey, what do you guys think of that? And I ask questions because I think that's where the best answers come from, some good questions. So I let the people who are specialists at something, let them be specialists at something. Like I don't buy a bunch of tools and fix my pipes in my house, right? Like I don't do that. What I do is I let the person who knows what they're doing show up and do it. So if I'm going to hire an artist, let them do it. I mean, nothing's worse than somebody who's telling me how to micromanage my skill. I have many times I've sat there and I've And I said to an editor, I said, "Love you, man, but okay, let me do my thing." And then they go, "Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I did it." And then I said, "Yeah." And then it comes on, they go, "Wow, man, I remember I was doing a packaging art for Hasbro, and the art director, I remember the art director called me and said, 'Oh, Hasbro didn't really like your drawing,' and I said, 'Well, I don't think that's what happened.' And he's like, I don't understand." He said, "They didn't like your thinking," and he's like, "Oh," and I said, "Let me do my thing," and I sent him a sketch in 10 minutes. And he goes, "Yeah, I got approved." I went, "There you go." Right? Is this because it's your you guys art directed it, right? So it's not the drawing that's the issue, or this is the issue. It's the thought, right? It's the thought. So let's get into it. And so I'm going around. I'm waiting till the last. How much time we have time? Oh, we got some time. So this drawing is a certain way, but the last 10 minutes is where it really comes together. And I'm kind of
Well, yeah, we have we need to wrap up around 12:40, so we have about 8 minutes left.
Oh, okay, here we go. So we're doing this. Now here's the best part of this drawing. See, like it's really out of proportion. This thing is not straight. So it's giving me a little bit, it's giving me a little, oh, that's a little better. Okay, here we go. This is the fun part. This is the fun part. So I take the white out and then I go back into the drawing and do the crazy highlight parts. And it goes from, oh, that's kind of cool, to like, oh, that's wicked. And this is the fun part about drawing in general, is like doing the last bit. And that's, we have to have a little bit of patience for that stuff, waiting till the end to do the best part. That's another thing too, as an artist, to be a little bit more patient. Sometimes we like to say, oh, like, let's get to the fun parts, or like drawing the cool costumes or the muscles, but you got to put the underpinning down first. Like anything else in life, you got to wait, right?
I think everyone's just a little bit mesmerized by this process. It's really awesome.
It's kind of fun. I think I'm doing live events. Like I do a lot of shows all over the world. And it's kind of fun. And when drawing live in front of people is something, and I'm having full conversations and they're asking me all kinds of questions and I'm just drawing and just showing them what I do. So I think that's really cool for that to happen. I mean, for people to see it. I'm old school. So this is kind of a lost art. I don't think a lot of people draw in front of people anymore. It's not my business. They kind of, they come with pre-drawn stuff, but I let people come up to me and say whatever their character is off the top of their head. They go, "Oh, my favorite is blah 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 blah," and I go, "Cool," and I'll draw it right there. I
Oh,
think
that's awesome.
that's also really cool, right? To see it actually come to life right in front of them.
We have a couple other maybe quick questions for you. Charlene asks, do you draw other things in your free time? That is, if you have any free time.
I do. I don't have a lot of free time, but I do draw things on it, and I paint a little bit, and I do a lot of different things. I have a clothing line that I do clothes, and yeah, I do a lot of things outside of comic books. I mean, also a couple jobs, like working for Hasbro and do other stuff. Like there's so many jobs I do that are so outside of the norm that most people would be surprised. I do a lot of cartoon designs, Transformers, like things are just different things, I should say.
Awesome.
And I use one.
Do you have a favorite drawing that you've done?
Oh God, no. No, I don't. I mean, it's there's favorite characters maybe, and yeah, but as far as favorite drawing, I don't think so. I mean, I like it all, man. It's so interesting when people ask that, because they want to say, yeah, this is my favorite, but I really don't have a favorite.
How about a favorite character?
Oh, that depends too. Like my favorite growing up was Black Panther. That favorite was Black Panther, and then I didn't like.
Okay.
Then I got a job on. I got a job on Excalibur, Age of Apocalypse, and all that stuff. And I drew Nightcrawler a lot. I mean, like, there's lots of different characters that you just love, right? But I mean, like, but then there's the characters that you just don't really. I didn't like Nightcrawler. Don't tell Marvel I said that. But I didn't really like Nightcrawler at all. And then I got the job on Excalibur, and I was like, oh my God, I got to draw this character all the time. And now it's one of my favorite characters to draw. But there was a time where I was like, oh God, no, not my favorite to draw.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, there's things you love and things you kind of go, oh, okay.
Yeah. Let's see. Caroline asks, you mentioned it takes you about a day and a half to finish a cover, but about how many hours are you actually putting into each drawing?
I'm a 6 to 8 hour guy, you know.
Okay.
So, you know, I mean, and I got to time myself. That's another thing too. I used to not do is put a time limit on some of the stuff because you got to look at the clock and you got to say, okay, I got to do this by this time. So you definitely have to be smart about your time. So I used to be like, oh, whatever, and then you realize, oh, I did this cover in a day, but you work 15 hours that day, so you're not really efficient with your time. You know what I mean? So based on how things, what you get paid and how things work, you have to be smart about how you do things, right? So I don't use I be smart. I'm smarter about it now. I mean, I used to be really bad about it, but now I'm much better with it.
And Tadson asks, best outfit, Spider-Man or Superman?
Oh my god, these are hard questions. I gotta admit, I mean, a Superman to me, cool, but Spider-Man all day. Come on, let's be honest. I have to be honest. Yeah, definitely. I definitely think Spider-Man has a way cooler costume, sort of. I Venom is way cooler, but I'm with you. Or wait a second, I should say I'm with you because I don't know what their favorite was. I'm jumping the gun here, but I don't know. I think Spider-Man has. I think it looks way cooler on screen if that helps. You know.
I think I agree with you there.
Yeah, way better on screen.
All right. Antoinette asks, do you choose which colorist will finish your drawing?
Mm.
Do you have a relationship with them, or do you have any say in how it will be colored?
Yeah, I do. I have complete control over that, which is
Cool.
good and bad. You know, like I definitely say, yeah. They ask me all the time, like, who do you pick? I mean, that's also a new thing. That's the last maybe 10 years. Before that, it was sort of like, no, it was like these are the people that work on the X-Men books, so they all the X-Men artists. But as you get older, I guess they want to keep you happy. I guess so. They say, oh well, who do you want to work with? And I have a relationship with Juan Fernandez. He lives in Puerto Rico, and he pretty much does all of the covers that I do. So, I have a couple here on the side here. So like this Moon Knight one, he did this one. Actually, that was one of my Killicon sketches. Did this in 45 minutes, and then then Marvel reached out to me and asked me if I want to use it as a cover.
Wow.
Yeah, and then he also did this one, which is the Spawn. He colored that. you know, I mean, just had some other ones here. He also did, I think he did this one too. He did this one with Thor, King of Night. He did that one as well. But this one was done by another colorist. This was done X-23 Wolverine. This is actually a homage of a very famous cover done by um, Barry Windsor Smith. Very, very, very super talented, awesome artist. So, you know,
Wow.
those.
Those are incredible.
Well, I appreciate it.
We are just about out of time, so
Perfect.
I will let you put put any finishing touches on that you want to, and if let
Yep.
me see if there's any last minute questions. Let's see. Can you just, while you're finishing up there, just tell us maybe some highlights of what supplies you use? Like, what are your favorite supplies, your go-to things?
Oh man, okay. This may kind of freak people out a little bit, but I always go with what's on sale. I am 100% that person. I know people always say, oh, this is my favorite go-to. No, I just make it work. I mean, I just make it work. Art supplies can be very tricky, what I mean? And sometimes you get to the store and they don't have your favorite thing, so you kind of say, oh no, I got to get to work, so I got to figure something out. I did assume my favorite markers are probably these ones, the Shinha Art. I mean, they also, they saw me draw with these and they reached out to me and sent me some stuff. So I should
Cool.
be like a sponsor almost. But I love those kinds of things. But I really buy what's on sale. I got to be honest.
That's awesome.
I appreciate it.
Great. Well, yeah, I think that's about it. So thank you so much, Ken, for this. This has
Anytime.
been incredible to watch.
I appreciate you saying that.
And where can people find you online?
My pen name is Ledkilla, which is, my mom hates it, but what can I do? But Ledkilla is my drawing name. Ken Lashley. I have Instagram, and I've got a group that's a public group that I let people come and ask me questions. Ledkilla, the art of Ken Lashley. So it's pretty cool. I mean, those are the places I go. I'm on Twitter very often, but I'm definitely on Instagram and Facebook.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again. Everyone go follow Ken anywhere you can. Thanks again for this amazing session.